Up, Dallas? It's your girl Rachel. We are back with another fabulous guest. This will be my third episode of the season 7. I have author Tabitha Yates here. How are you, ma'am?
Good morning.
I'm so thankful to have you here. So we're going to be talking about one of those things that most people don't really talk about, which is church hurt. Um, I've experienced it, Tabitha's experienced it, but her testimony is what we're really going to be talking about today. So, Tabitha, can you tell our viewers first where to find you on social media in case they want to follow you?
Yeah, I'm on the Redeemed Mama dash Tabitha Yates on Facebook, and then I'm on Tabitha Yates Author on Instagram, and you can find my website at www.theredeemedmama.com.
All right, absolutely. So let's just get into it. So, the topic of church hurt, why, first of all, in your experience, can you tell the viewers what you experienced from the church that made you hurt so bad?
Yeah, I grew up in church, which I could now pretty accurately identify as a cult. It was very constant overstepping of leadership and boundaries. My dad left at an early age, and so kind of my mom filled the hole with, spiritual leaders of a male role model, but they felt like they could tell me anything, do anything to me, put me through anything, and so there was a lot of abuse that began pretty early, and a lot of so much spiritual abuse and misusing and weaponizing God and Scripture to make me fear them and feel like I had to do whatever they say. There was a lot of mental health issues that started building up, and then even more abuse, kind of snowballed because they felt like my depression was a sin and was me being rebellious, and so I started just a breakdown of my relationship with the Lord because they were the conduit to my relationship with the Lord at that age, and everything that they represented about Jesus and faith in the Bible was false and was harmful. And so it ultimately drove me away from Jesus for a season because what I was seeing demonstrated by people in the church was such a misuse of power and weaponizing people's trust in them and weaponizing people's belief in that they were speaking for Jesus to them, and so they said a lot of harmful things to me in the name of God, and it really stuck with me my whole life.
And I think that's something that a lot of people don't talk about, but they do experience a lot. There's a lot of people who do use the word of God as a weapon in the
Yes.
wrong context.
Mhm.
Your story, your testimony about going through this is way deeper than mine. So how did you find Jesus and come back? Like how did you recover from that?
Really, I had to walk through a lot of steps and a lot of years of healing. And I really detailed it, step by step of kind of how I healed in my book because it was such a painful process. I literally just I had to step away for a while because it was all my formative years, my whole life growing up, and I couldn't untangle who Jesus was from how people were using him against me. So Jesus didn't represent love or comfort or goodness or kindness to me. He was the bad guy. He was the one waiting to jump on me every time I made a mistake, and that's how he had been represented to me. So it really took a season of a few years of just running. Honestly just running, and those are my prodigal years where I was like, well, if that's God, I want nothing to do with him. And my story, it did culminate in such severe mental health issues that I did end up attempting suicide, and so I was blamed for that. It was all my fault somehow. It was all my lack of faith, and I just couldn't reconcile who I wanted Jesus to be, and how he was being presented to me. And so it took me, first of all, really just acknowledging the pain. Like I had to sit with it and be like, this is abuse. That this is not right. This is not healthy. This is not Jesus. And I had to separate myself from those sources of pain, and from those people. It wasn't just like a one-time event. I mean, they were toxic. It was a horrible church environment, and I knew I personally had to get out of that church. I was like, this is never going to change. This is not. They're never going to be healthy. They're never going to be an accurate representation of who Christ is. And so part of that process for me was leaving that church to eventually find another one that operated in a more healthy way. And
Mhm.
then I really had to face everything because I wanted to run from it. It represented so much darkness and so much sadness for me. And it was really presented to me like, man, God hates you. Like, you're such a horrible Christian. You have this depression, you have all this trauma, you've been through all this abuse. And if you were a better Christian, like, you'd handle it better. And so it was so painful for me to just sit and stare at everything and to be like, I have to go through this. I have to feel it. I have to face it, and then I have to start separating what was Jesus and what was very deeply flawed people, and what were they telling me that was not biblical at all and didn't represent Christ's character. And so it was really just a process of me having to give myself grace to go through that healing journey and know that this is not going to be instantaneous. This is really going to be a long untangling of all of your belief system, and I half of me kind of hates that word deconstructing, but it's what I had to do to break down everything that was not Jesus and then come back to who is he really and how does he really feel about me and where do I belong with him? Where's my place with him? Do I have a place in the body of Christ? Um, so that there was so many steps that I really had to go through to get to a point where I was willing to consider following Jesus again, where I felt like I had any idea of who he really was, and even more so to come back into the church and step back into fellowship and feel like I could do it in a healthy way with healthy boundaries, and that I wouldn't be drawn to the same type of toxic church and system, that I would know better now. I was healthier now, and I would be able to re-engage with community in a way that was not detrimental to me anymore.
Absolutely. And I think that that's one of the things that we have to do is definitely understand that that's not Jesus. That's misrepresentation of what the gospel preaches in the first place. Because God is a loving God. God gave his son Jesus to die for us for our sins. And, because we're imperfect, because we're sinners, that, we're so flawed. And for people to be walking around like every little thing that you do in life is going to send you straight to hell. Like that's not how that works at all.
Yeah.
And I understand that through my journey, I was like, if there's a church that's unaccepting, they say they're the church, but they're unaccepting and they're not telling you about the gospel of Jesus Christ. They're not welcoming you as you are. They're not a real church. The church is the people, not the building, and they're misleading. So, the spirit kind of went to work on me about that. Like when you're testing out churches and stuff,
Yeah.
um, you can tell if the fruit of the spirit is there, like if it's really there, if they're really welcoming, like they're really doing exactly what they say they're doing. That's one of the things that I had to learn as well. So after this journey for you, Tabitha, finding Jesus and everything, like you got this book, right? Talking about Jesus and therapy. So this is like your actual testimony and everything you've experienced. And tell the viewers about this book.
Ooh, this book was hard to write. This was 5 years in the making. I joked
Mhm.
that God had to drag me kicking and screaming the whole time because when you're gonna address abuse in your family, abuse in the church, and really one of the first verses God gave me, I think it was in Luke about shining a light onto the darkness. I was like, I don't want to be the one to do this. Like I know I'm putting a target on my back, and Lord, I really don't want to do this. And he was like, I'm with you, and I this is obedience to me. You have to walk this out. And so it took 5 years to get this book from the proposal stage to the published stage. And it was such a healing journey for me as well, because it's just again and again, I had to come toe to toe with my demons and my past, and just God kept on refining me through the process. And all I wanted to do is for someone else to not feel like I felt, to not feel so alone, to be like, oh, this has happened to other people, and other
Mhm.
people have really struggled with this intersection where mental health and your faith just seem incompatible. And then you have all these misconceptions in the church where people are telling you, yeah, like if you trusted God more, you wouldn't be dealing with this and you shouldn't be feeling this way and you must not really have strong faith. And I was like, man, Lord, I really believe in you. And I, at this point, have this unshakable faith. And I still feel less than. I still feel like I'm not a good enough Christian because I still have panic attacks. I grew up under such constant trauma and abuse that it fundamentally changed who I am and how my nervous system responds. And I have been in therapy for, gosh, 25 years now, and I'm never going to be healed on this side of heaven completely and fully. I'm always going to be impacted by the extent of abuse I went through, and
Mhm.
it felt hopeless sometimes. Like I'm never like, what testimony could I possibly have? Because I'm still in the fire. I'm still going through it. And God really showed me that you can walk with other people through this, and your
Mhm.
pain can be a conduit to lead people to Jesus because they'll realize they aren't alone. And you're going to talk about things that a lot of people aren't talking about, and you're going to draw people out of the shadows. And if that's all that, the reason for my pain was that I can keep on going back into hell with buckets of water, I'm like, I'll do it and I'll serve you, Lord, and I'll do what you've called me to do. And so everything about this book was just a test of my obedience to him and my willingness to be on the altar and to let him use my pain in a way that at least could help other people know that they're not in it by themselves.
Oh my goodness. Like that is such a powerful statement. And thank you for sharing that with me too. I know for a fact there's a lot of people out there that are just like, well, if you just pray about it, you'll be fine. Like, that prayer should be enough. But for our viewers out there, like, can you please tell them why and how God uses people to help you heal? It's not just prayer, but, people helping you through your journey.
Yeah. And I mean, I always like to use that example when someone is drowning and there's flood waters rising and they're up on their roof and God sends every possible natural means of rescue, a helicopter, a boat. He keeps on sending people to you to keep you from drowning. And you're like, God will save me, God will save me, God will save me. And that is such a flaw we have in the Christian community, that we over spiritualize mental health to the point that we're crippling people. We are shaming them into not getting help, into being silent, into feeling like they are a second class Christian if they admit that they have anxiety, that they have depression, that they struggle with their mental health in any capacity. And God is so faithful to equip people and send people and use people. You see nothing but examples of that through the whole Bible, of God taking these incredibly flawed and broken people but using them in such powerful ways. And he's always used people. And I think to assume that God wouldn't equip therapists and mental health professionals and psychiatrists and counselors, that he wouldn't use those people, is so sad, because we're robbing an entire group of people from using the gifts that God's given them to minister to us and to help us heal. And we don't live in a whole world. We live in a broken world where we experience trauma that God never wanted us to. And so there is just a natural aftermath of living in this, with this brokenness. And it's our job to heal. It's our job to move our feet. We can't control what happened to us, but we can control now how we move forward and how we're going to keep on showing up in life. And for me, that was so important. I was like, I'm not going to be okay if I just drown in this. I have to reach out for a lifeline. And counseling was that for me. And it was, my first counselor was this amazing Christian psychologist. And I wouldn't be here today. And I don't only attribute it to like this side or this side. I'm not like, oh, I can absolutely say I wouldn't have made it through without Jesus and my faith, but I can absolutely say I wouldn't have made it through without the support of mental health professionals, because I had to have both. And I think we have to stop stigmatizing one and saying the other one will somehow, can God, I mean, God can supernaturally heal us, of course, but have I seen very many instances of that? No, because the growth is in the climb, it's in the journey. All the lessons I've learned, the only reason I have anything to say is because of my healing journey and because of all the lessons God's taught me along the way. And I think if God just instantly healed so many of us, all that would be lost. All the character that was built, all the lessons, and all the ways that he can now use us to minister to other people. So many of the people I know that are therapists are because of their own trauma and what they've walked through and wanting to use their experience to help others. And we would just take all of that away if God just swooped in and, it's a part of the journey, it's a part of the process, and God uses all of it.
Absolutely. And I agree with that too. Because, everybody has spiritual gifts. Everybody has something that God has equipped them to do to help someone else, especially, in terms of talking about the gospel. We're supposed to talk about our testimony. We're supposed to be helping other people on our journeys too. So that is one of the things that I have realized, and that's why, like, whenever I'm going through the memories and all that kind of stuff, ruminating. I talk about that a lot about ruminating.
Yeah.
Um, I talk to people that's natural. It's part of your healing journey to ruminate. It's gonna happen because when you're healing from trauma, you're not getting over it. You're just learning how to look at it different.
Yeah.
Like finding purpose in your pain, which is something that I've had to learn. I've had to learn that, there's a young lady that's going through this, maybe a single mom, maybe a mom who's been married and she's basically living life like a single mom because, her husband disappeared or something. I've experienced all of that.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I'm learning is that, yes, you do need therapy. You do need that community of people. You do need your tribe of women. You do need people that God will use to breathe life into you, for you to do life better.
Yeah.
And I'm just thankful for your book right here. And the one chapter that I really was looking at was, give me just a second, the fall from grace. Separating Christ from Christianity. That one's chapter 6. I love that one. And then also the one that really speaks to me big time is the healing takes time. Uh,
Mhm.
like you said, you've been through therapy for 25 years. I mean, you're still going through it. You still relive it because you've had all that trauma in your life. And I want the viewers to also understand that it does take time. It's not a race, it's a marathon. And that you really do need to embrace the community and Jesus and therapy to make it through, for sure. Absolutely. So, I also would like to talk to you to see where people can get this book at because this is like a must-have in your reads for sure.
Thank you. Yep, it's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Christian Book, pretty much anywhere that you can buy books, you can find it. And it's not me talking to you, it's me going through it with you. And that's, I think, so often I'm surrounded now by this community of all these amazing mental health professionals. And I'll be like, who am I to be talking to anybody? But honestly, God's shown me there's a power in the lived experience, in someone looking at you and being like, man, if you could come back from a psych ward lockdown and suicide attempts and cutting and just the depths of depression and trauma you went through, and now you can live a life of purpose that brings you so much joy, like I can one day get to the other side of this. And it's both. It's that there is things that can absolutely be healed from, but also that you can still have so much value as a human being and get so much out of life in the middle of it. Because I look at it as, this is my whole life now. I'm going to be healing for my kids' sake and for my sake for as long as it takes. And a lot of that might be the rest of my life. And learning to practice that radical acceptance and be like, this is my life. I can't undo everything that happened to me. All I can do is heal and live the very fullest life that I can now. And so it's an encouragement to people to be like, there's still beauty. There's still beauty in the pain. There's still good things ahead for me. I can get through it too. There's still so much healing, so many things I can. You feel like you don't have control when you've been through trauma and things have happened to you and people have wounded you in ways that you weren't able to protect yourself. And I think part of the healing process is taking back some of that ownership. Is like, I can control now. I can control how I operate now, how I approach things, how I heal my nervous system, how I self-soothe, how I practice self-care. I can do a lot now, that and I have a lot of say now. And there's a peace in that comes when you've lived a whole life outside of your control and people just wounding you and damaging you. And so I just want this book to encourage people and for them to feel like they aren't alone and that there's still so much hope and healing and goodness ahead, no matter how dark your past has been.
Absolutely. So, and I love everything that you're writing here. It's like literally your whole journey, your whole walk, beginning to end, and you're still going through it. So
Yeah.
I would like to ask you two bonus questions.
Yeah.
My first question for you is on this healing journey that you're on, like you're still going through it, you're still healing, you're still walking with God on this whole journey, but with all this going on, what has been your favorite part? Like if you could just like think about one thing that has been the most impactful on your journey so far, what was that moment?
Hmm. That's hard. There's a couple ties, but I'm gonna say my favorite part is seeing how the healing affects my kids. Because I have, this generational pattern that I finally, through God's grace, am able to break. So when I see my kids come to me and be able to feel safe with me and be able to lean on me, and I had my whole childhood being like, I don't think there's any safe people. Like, I don't think there's anyone I can go to who's not going to hurt me or who's not going to protect me from being hurt. For my kids to feel so secure and so safe and to know that they get to a totally different childhood, it hurts a little bit sometimes because I can't go back and change what my childhood is, but I get to give them a totally different story. And that to me makes all the pain of healing worth it.
Oh, I love that. That's a great point of view right there. Just seeing it, the change in your children, like that
Yeah.
positiveness, that they have that ability to come to you and talk to you about those things. I think that's so encouraging for all the parents out there for sure. To heal yourself so you can help your children heal later on.
Yeah.
That's amazing. My next question for you is if you had some advice for a young lady out there that is about to walk through your journey or walking through it, what would you tell her?
Mm. That God's goodness is not determined by people, that he can rescue us from the most painful of circumstances. And there's so long that I couldn't say it as well. I couldn't say God is still good. I was like, no, he's not. Look at my life. And it took such a long time, again, of just unraveling people from God to see his hand in so many things that in the moment I didn't feel like he was with me at all. And to be able to look back and be like, wow, like he was in that room. He was with me and to see the things he walked me through and brought me through. And just it's really hard when you look around and you don't feel like there's a person to hold on to, that there's because God made us for community. He made us for fellowship. He made us for people. And after growing up and having almost no one that I could grab onto that was this physical, literal representation of Jesus and safety and love, um, to know that you can become a person still. For me to have not experienced that at all, that I've become a person that can represent that to other people, it heals such a big part of my heart because it will always sting a little bit that I didn't get that. But every time God gives me a chance to step into a space and be that love and be that physical representation of God's grace and to minister and just put a little healing balm on someone's wounding, the fact that God's given me the grace to do that, like, man, I wouldn't be here and I wouldn't be doing the things I was doing if I hadn't lived that pain and if I didn't know exactly what it feels like to not have that. And the fact God can turn your entire story around. Like I remember when I was in the midst of being so suicidal and I was like, God, I don't even care. Any way that you could use my story. I just went out. I just want this to be over. Like I don't I don't need a testimony, just leave me alone, you know? And that was my whole point of view in that moment because I didn't have the perspective that God had. And now I look at all the years that he is able to redeem and all the things he's used and all the things that have become beautiful in my life that the root of it was pain. And it gives me such hope. When you finally get that kingdom perspective and see what God can do with pain, it doesn't mean I would wish my life on anybody, but to know that God will always find a way to redeem and restore it if you let him. It gives me such a hope for anything now that I go through because I now have the perspective of seeing what God can do with it. So I think it just gives you this eternal hope to know that your story isn't over in the pain that you're in the brokenness that you're in, that God is not going to leave you in those ashes. That's never his plan. That's never his heart. And just be faithful to show up and walk with him and walk through
Yeah.
that healing journey and see all the beautiful things that can come out of that pain.
And that's really powerful, actually. One of the things that I was thinking whenever you were talking about that was the actual forgiveness that you had to give people. Like, I don't think a lot of people really talk about forgiveness enough. And that now that we're like talking about it and I'm thinking about it, I want to ask you, like, through all that pain and heartache that you went through, especially when it comes from your family, like you're experiencing it, you're going through it, you have to relive it like constantly and stuff. How did you find how did you find the strength to forgive people and continue to go on your journey for the viewers out there?
I don't think I had the strength. I think that if it was in my flesh, I'd be holding some torches for some people. I think that it came from the perspective of, I remember my dad, was so abusive to me, and just watching him go on his merry way and live his life and not pay for it and be successful in terms of the world, like that burnt me up pretty bad. Watching pastors who had abused me get out of that church, but then just go on to another church and know they were going to keep doing the same thing to other people. I was like, where is the justice, Lord? And in our flesh, we're like, some payback would be nice, and for me it really took me understanding and watching that this is not causing them suffering at all. I could ruminate on this 100 times a day, replay all the conversations, think of everything I would say, and just drown in this bitterness and this anger. And they're out there living their merry lives, and it's hurting me. It's only hurting me. And what I'm doing is I'm still handing them the key. I'm still giving them the power because it's still ruling over my life. The bitterness and the unforgiveness and the anger, it was eating me alive, how much rage I felt. And so God did a beautiful thing where I feel a tremendous sense of justice now. And that's what I can do with my voice now, is be an advocate for abuse that's going on in the church, for change that needs to happen in the church, for abuse that's going on in family systems, for generational patterns. All of that stuff that was just anger and it didn't have an avenue or anywhere to go, God took it and be like, what ripple effects can we make with this? What change can you make? How can we use your story for something good, where maybe it stops some other abuse, where maybe it stops some other pain, where maybe it transforms just one family? If my book, one parent read it and it changed how they parented their children and it created a ripple effect for generations to come, it's worth it. And so that was what Jesus did with it, is he took the pain and the anger and the injustice of it all and gave me a platform to talk about it and to possibly, by God's grace, create some changes and shine a light on things that other people don't want to talk about sometimes.
Yeah, a lot of people really don't want to talk about it because let me just say, like, sometimes the churches are just like, shh, we don't need to talk about that. That's not what we're supposed to be getting more people to come in. Like, let's not talk about those sensitive topics. But that's not really teaching either, because if you're gonna teach to broken people, you're gonna preach the gospel. Everybody who needs to hear it is a broken person. They need
Yeah.
to hear it. So there's those single moms, there's those married moms, there's people who have been through abuse, people have been through, situations that other people have hurt them. There is also like, men on drugs. There's men that have been drinking, have alcoholism. There are men that have abandoned their families. Like everybody needs to hear the gospel. The gospel is for everyone. Um, and we all need to work together to heal instead of judge. And I think that's one of the things that I had to understand too, is that when you start seeing a church, the people, when you start seeing people that actually like mirror Jesus's love for you, like you start breaking that stigma about the church hurt. Because
Yeah.
really, we were hurt by the people in the church, in the wrong church. But
Well, and
when you find the right people, the right tribe, the people that are really wanting to help you heal, like that's a feeling that you embrace like for years.
well, and God is doing a rattling right now, and we're watching it happen. It's becoming more of a culturally acceptable topic to expose the abuse, to expose the toxic parts of the church, because my heart, and that was what God tasked me with in this book, is we are not bashing the church. We are not trying to deter people from church. We're trying to rebuild. So you have to expose where the foundation is not solid and where it's not built on Jesus to be able to rebuild in the right way. And I feel like that was a job that God gave me in this book, to hold that balance where I'm not sitting here like, man, the church is the worst. Like, I am an active churchgoer now. I'm actively involved. I believe in fellowship. I believe in the good that comes out of that. I believe in what the Bible says, to not forsake that. But man, there are some places that God needs to shake, and he needs to rattle. And I see him doing that now in the church in so many ways. And he's refining people, and he is just separating the wheat from the chaff. And we're seeing that now, where we're seeing the people who is really following Jesus and who is really anchored in him. And that has to happen. I mean, especially the closer we get to the end days, like God has to do that. And he is exposing people now. And it's not always pretty, but I think that it's really necessary.
It's absolutely necessary. 1000%. I mean, I could say a million if I could. It's a absolute necessary. But Tabitha, I want to tell you thank you for being on my podcast today. I feel like this episode is probably going to reach quite a few people. I mean, even if it reaches one and they hear the message that, Jesus and therapy is essential, that God uses people to actually heal other people, I feel like this is a message people really do need to hear. So I just want to thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to chat with you.
All right, guys. So this concludes our episode here for What's Up Dallas podcast, and we will be back with another one. Thank you.